Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the Baker Act and specifically, what are your chances or what are your loved one's chances of getting released if you don't take any action? And that was a question that was actually asked by somebody who called in and said, well, why should I hire you guys? Maybe I should just wait. What are the chances are that they get released? I thought that was a good question. So let me give you some numbers here. I think that'll help you. First of all, let's just back up a little bit. Remember, the Baker Act is a statute that allows the state of Florida to take custody of your loved one. So if they have been Baker Acted, then they have become a temporary ward of the state. That can become more permanent depending on, which direction the case goes in. Now, the other thing to remember is there's two types of Baker Act. There's voluntary and there's involuntary. And you can be switched from involuntary to voluntary. You cannot be, quote, switched from voluntary to involuntary unless they file to keep you. And I don't want to get too far off track here because otherwise I'm going to confuse you. But needless to say, there is involuntary detention and voluntary detention. Now, the involuntary detention is the one that you would associate the 72-hour clock ticking, right? I think just about everybody that calls us says, my loved one's been held, more than 72 hours, or it's not been 72 hours. I know they can only hold them for 72 hours. And our response is yes, provided they are involuntary. Because if they're voluntary, they can be held, there's no clock ticking, indefinitely. So we're right now, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about what the chances are of your loved one getting released if you do nothing and there's an involuntary detention. Now, I'm going to preface this by sharing with you, obviously, I had a family member Baker Acted. I was there when it all went down. And it's become a bit of a mission of mine to get everybody out that possibly can be released because I think the mental health system here in Florida is draconian and broken. And the Baker Act is a convoluted mess. And I have been very public about that. And I think our legislator did a lousy job of trying to fix it in 2024. But I digress for a second. So here's the deal. Once you are at the receiving facility, whether it's a behavioral health unit of a hospital or it's a standalone Baker Act receiving facility, if you are involuntary, that should trigger the 72-hour clock to start ticking. Now, at the end of 72 hours, one of three things is supposed to happen. And remember, I say supposed because nobody knows that your loved one's there, right? There's no oversight here, which has been really one of my pet peeves with the Baker Act. Nobody knows they're there, and as a general rule, you can't sue them for any of this stuff unless, God forbid, they get harmed, because they do have a duty to keep your loved one safe. But let's say they're there involuntary, the 72-hour clock is ticking, and they actually follow the law. After 72 hours, one of three things is supposed to happen. Number one, they're supposed to release them. Number two, they get your loved one by hook or by crook, although the statute says informed consent, to agree to be there on a voluntary basis, which means that there's no longer any clock ticking. It's an indefinite hold without a court order. Or number three, they file a petition to have your loved one detained for an extended period of time, anywhere from 0 to the next 6 months. And once they file that petition, and I've seen petitions filed just to keep people, even though they don't intend to keep them long term, because once they file the petition, the court is going to schedule a hearing which must take place within 5 days, absent some type of continuance. So it's possible your loved one could be there for 72 hours. The facility files, the hearing takes place within 5 days. And let's not forget, they may have been in a hospital for a couple of days seeking medical attention. And you can see how this really can turn into a significant period of time without a court order. So of the three options, two of them lead to your loved one potentially getting stuck for a significant period of time. Only one of them results in your loved one potentially getting released. So I tell people, I give it, there's a 1/3 chance that they're going to get released. There's a 2/3 chance that they're not going to get released. That's just a sort of a bare bones statistical analysis. I can tell you that if your loved one has been detained and they have health insurance, the chances of them getting released, I would say, are somewhere between slim and none. What do I base that on? Well, of the 500 cases that I've now filed over the last several years, 498 of them had health insurance. So statistically speaking, if your loved one has health insurance, even though the statute would seem to suggest that they have a 1/3 likelihood to get out, I think their chances are significantly smaller. I mean, what are we talking about here? I mean, less than 1% chance they're going to get out? I mean, that's just my experience. That's what we've seen. And so, look, if you want to take the chance, I mean, that's entirely up to you. I don't tell people what to do. I just share our experiences with you, like I do in these videos, right? If you call and speak to Brittany or Rachel in intake, they'll tell you what you should probably expect. And so if you're willing to take the chance, that's perfectly okay. But if some of the red flags are there, number one being your loved one has health insurance, then I think you need to seriously consider whether you're willing to take the risk. Now, that doesn't mean to say that somebody without health insurance can't get stuck, but it does mean that if you have health insurance, your chances of getting stuck are significantly higher. 2 times out of 500, whatever the math is. And I'm sorry, as a lawyer, math is not my strong suit. But you get the point I'm trying to make here. And I wanted to share that with you because I think you need to know that so you can decide if you actually want to retain counsel or if you're willing to take the chance. If you are, so be it, right? And obviously, you know the consequences of doing that. And I would just say this: if your loved one gets detained, okay, because there's a court order or they're now on a voluntary admission basis, it's significantly harder to get them out. Okay, not impossible, but harder. And so I just lay that out there, and I want to share that with you, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you like the video, I'd appreciate the thumbs up. And if you could subscribe to the channel, I'd be even more grateful. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.